At 2 a.m. on June 26, 1975, the electricity to Delhi's major newspaper presses was cut. The heavy industrial machines rolling out the morning news grew completely silent as the lights suddenly went out. By the time the sun rose, the standard operations of the world's largest democracy were suspended. A state of national emergency had been declared across the country. This 21-month period served as a vulnerability test for the Indian Republic, measuring the resilience of its democratic institutions when the entire nation was directed by a single office. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi built a reputation as the Iron Lady after a landslide election in 1971, but by 1974, that authority was under pressure. Economic shocks and high inflation triggered massive strikes, with student-led movements calling for a total revolution. While these street protests created a volatile atmosphere, the immediate catalyst for the emergency arrived in a courtroom. On June 12, 1975, the Allahabad High Court delivered a verdict that threatened to end the Prime Minister's political career. Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha found Indira Gandhi guilty of electoral malpractice for using government officials in her campaign. The court declared her election null and void, stripping her of her parliamentary seat and barring her from office for 6 years. Faced with losing her position, she bypassed her own cabinet and went directly to the president. She requested the invocation of Article 352 of the Constitution, citing internal disturbance as the reason for an immediate emergency. This move activated a constitutional mechanism that allowed the Prime Minister to circumvent the legislature and the cabinet, centralizing control within the executive branch. The administration's first action was to implement total press censorship. Every news report and editorial now required government approval, and journalists who resisted faced imprisonment or deportation. Several major newspapers, like the Indian Express and the Statesman, protested by printing blank editorial pages, leaving silent white columns where critiques should have been. To manage the political opposition, the state relied on the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, or MISA. MISA legalized preventative detention, allowing the government to arrest individuals on the suspicion that they might disrupt public order. Using this law, the state imprisoned thousands of activists and opposition leaders without filing formal charges or providing a trial. By simultaneously controlling the press and detaining political rivals, the administration removed the two primary forces of public accountability. With the opposition in prison, Indira Gandhi used the captive parliament to restructure the legal foundations of the state. The 39th Amendment placed the Prime Minister's election beyond court jurisdiction. The 42nd Amendment, the Mini Constitution, modified 40 articles to favor the executive. It stripped courts of review power and suspended fundamental rights like habeas corpus. The administration used the parliament to build a legal architecture that authorized the suspension of civil liberties. As judicial oversight vanished, state policy became increasingly coercive. Sanjay Gandhi, the Prime Minister's son, took a leading role in enforcing the regime's new social initiatives, despite holding no official cabinet post. He directed an urban renewal campaign that involved the demolition of slums in the national capital. These clearances forcefully displaced over 700,000 citizens from Delhi to settlements outside the city. The most invasive campaign of the emergency was a state-run population control program, supported by international loans aimed at lowering birth rates. Local officials and police were given daily quotas for vasectomies. To reach these numbers, security forces began rounding up men and villagers for forced surgeries in state-run camps. This led to violent resistance. In places like Sultanpur, villagers clashed with police, leading to incidents where officers fired on unarmed crowds. By 1977, an estimated 6.2 million people had undergone these procedures. When the executive branch is no longer checked by courts or the media, institutional control can quickly lead to direct violence against the population. In early 1977, Indira Gandhi eased restrictions and called for general elections, likely believing the opposition had been neutralized and her mandate would be renewed. Instead, fractured political groups united into the Janata Party, campaigning on a platform that framed the election as a choice between democracy and dictatorship. The election resulted in a heavy defeat for the Congress Party. Indira Gandhi lost her own seat, and Morarji Desai became the Prime Minister of the nation's first non-Congress government. The new government passed the 44th Amendment to prevent future misuse of emergency powers. It required full cabinet consensus for an emergency declaration, limited its grounds to armed rebellion, and ensured that the right to life and liberty could never be suspended. The 1975 emergency showed how the legal framework of a republic can be used to suppress it, but its conclusion demonstrated that a democratic electorate is a powerful force of accountability.